what support is available for family members who have a loved one with a mental illness? So resources for parents of, spouses of, children of, loved ones with mental illness.
I lead a group at Thirst Church, which is on the Oakwood website, that NAMI puts on, which is called the National Alliance of Mental Illness, and it's for family members of people with mental illness. And we meet twice a month, and we use the NAMI methodology, and I think it can be a very helpful group.
That reminds me too, thank you, Debbie. On our resource table, there is a support group sheet that can also be downloaded on our website, and that talks about all the different support group opportunities that are connected with our Oakwood community. Thank you. Things like the support groups that Debbie helps to lead, mental health-wise, also Pure Desire groups related to sexual addiction, Celebrate Recovery related to other addictions, Grief Share, and some others as well. So there's, again, a printed flyer and also on our website. But other thoughts about resources for family members or loved ones of those with mental illness?
Well, what comes to mind is that any therapist is certainly capable, willing to, and often will work with family members. If the person themselves that's struggling won't get help, it's not uncommon for family members to seek help for themselves so that they have guidance, because it really, sometimes you have to be strategic in how you deal with a person that is struggling with a mental health disorder, because the things that are most intuitive that people are likely to do aren't always the things that are the most helpful.
And maybe my turn to plug again that counseling for yourself can also be helpful, to have a wise counselor, even a professional that you go to see to help support you as you're supporting a loved one can be another great thing. This is a question that got written in. It's almost a follow-up, so I think I'd like to ask it now. And this question is, how do you help someone that's obviously struggling but that will not admit it, related to depression or anxiety, or if they're not willing to seek help? How do you help them?
The first thing that comes to mind is express your concern and why you have it. You know, be direct about what you see and why you're concerned about it, and be very open about your love and concern for the person and why you think that help may be available. Offer to go with them. Ask them why they're resistant. Sometimes people have prejudices or fears about seeking help.
If you have someone in your family that, something going on and they don't see it, I think if you get the family together, and if it's more than one person in a loving way, it's more convincing, like, okay, I see mom, dad, and sister are saying that, I'm getting violent, So I think as a family, you can convince your loved ones that there's something going on. And I've seen that to be very successful, especially when they love you and then they do want to, they do trust you, and they will pursue help. I have seen it happen. But we had that actually in our family, where we had a meeting and it was hard to get to this person, and we were going to do the three-party agreement, and but because it was three of us saying it, they was willing to go get the help.
I was just going to add, I know at the beginning we had talked about some of the symptoms of just recognizing a mental illness and, noticing that maybe somebody is just a little bit off balance. And sometimes the gentle approach to even say, I'm really worried about you. Normally, you get 6 or 7 hours, if you know this person well, you get 6 or 7 hours of sleep, and man, it seems like in the last 3 nights you've only gotten a couple hours, and I'm kind of worried, and you're not really eating, and so you're like very gently pointing out some of those symptoms. Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes that's a way to get a conversation going where you're not using the word depression, you're not using the word mental illness, you're talking about things that maybe they could recognize. Yeah, I'm not sleeping, and I'm not eating, and some of those kinds of things. So.
And I think what Donna said earlier is so true, that very few people have someone that will listen. So I think one of the first suggestions I would have is to listen, and listen well, and just don't offer resources or opinions or what somebody should do or you should do this or that or the other. Just listen. And sometimes, we're all very busy and it is hard. Like you said, it's hard to listen. But I just think listening would be step one.
I do believe we believe listening is not helping. We believe like we need to get you a resource, we need to get you, somewhere where you can get help. But listening is helping. Listening is healing.
Excellent. This next question, it's another one that was written in. And in light of the pandemic and the year that we've been through, so many changes, what are some daily or regular things that people can do to help keep calm or to help bring a sense of normalcy and peace? Things that can be done daily or regular rhythms that can help us keep calm or help us keep a sense of peace.
Okay, my number one is music. Nice, quiet, calming, soaking, instrumental music. Some do ocean, raindrops, something very calming. I had some young ladies that went through the COVID, and they couldn't sleep at night, and they thought they're gonna die and all that. And I said, let's try this last thing and get the soaking music on, get the calming music, and it just put all of them to sleep. So I think music, because music also does a lot of things to the lobe. One is it helps to focus. And so that music is help to focus, and that focus will help you to do the things that you have to do when you need to be calm to do them.
One of the ways to stay calm during the pandemic is to turn off the TV. I mean, seriously, stop watching the news because they're trying to keep you rooted to the TV. So there's always some big news having to do with COVID, and everybody cares about it. So it's really a way of kind of keeping you hooked in, because the more nervous you are, the more information you're going to seek out. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't be informed, but turning off the TV can bring you peace of mind in many ways. Also, stick to a routine, get enough sleep, watch out for your diet, get out in nature and get your body moving in addition to listening to music. But all of those things, fresh air, sunshine, recreation, those are all really, really good ways of keeping yourself mentally and physically healthy, because, this is one of those things where there's only so much that you can do. And we all know that worrying and sitting around ruminating about something is not ever helpful, whether it's COVID or anything else.
The other thing I would add to that, and I tell my students this all the time, is get off of all your social media. There's a lot of information out there that gets put on there. Some of it's true, some of it's untrue. I mean, you all know. And I think people can get really bogged down in that. And it's just, I tell them you need to unplug sometimes and just go do things that have nothing to do with technology. Your Chromebook, your this, your that, all of that. So
I'll say a controversial thing, which if you do come see me in therapy, that's what you'll get to, okay? So I would say that one thing to do is to rebel. And what I mean by that is the pandemic, the response to the pandemic is essentially trying to heap an artificial anxiety and depression onto the world, which is a tool that Satan will use to try to keep us chained to our depression, to our misery, to those things that are already there but are just heightened like a magnifying glass. So if you rebel against what the pandemic response is telling you you have to do, don't forget that we have our freedom in Christ, and that is our number one authority in life. I understand that there are certain rules and regulations and guidelines. So when I say rebel, I don't mean against those. Okay, don't go out helping yourself to whatever you want from Chick-fil-A without paying. But rebel against the things that want to keep you down and in misery. So.
And this maybe goes without saying, but the power of prayer and scripture as well, right? To ground us, to center us, to refocus us. Yeah, wonderful. wouldn't be right if I didn't mention that, right? Put in those 2 cents. So this next question is going to transition us into marriage and family related questions. And the question is, how do we know when or if we need marriage counseling, and does it really work?
Are you married? Okay. The same kind of idea with noticing that things are out of balance. You're getting more snippy. A coffee cup on the counter is no longer just a coffee cup. It's like a hydra with like 7 heads, and it's trying to attack you. And it was placed there by your husband because the wife would never leave anything out of place. I would say there's nothing wrong with going to marital counseling, no matter when. Okay, just try it out. If you're married, you need counseling. I'm married myself. I need it. My wife needs it more than I do. So it's not a bad thing. This is how I reduce stigma. I say very inappropriate jokes, which make people think, did he just say that? And then when I watch the video, I think, did I just say that? And that's how life is. Life is messy, and it gets messier in a pandemic. It gets messier when you have children or you go through transitions. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with seeking out therapy.
Would anyone else speak to the second part of that question? Does it really work? Does marriage counseling, does therapy for couples really work?
I mean, I think it absolutely works if you go in with the mindset that you want help and you want to work on your marriage. I've been in situations where the couple that came in was well on their way to getting divorced, and all they were doing was crossing off something on their checklist. Well, we did that and it didn't work. And even the first session, we got nowhere. It was an argument, a yelling match between them from the very first second. So I do think that marriage therapy, marriage counseling absolutely works, but it has to be something that you're willing to engage in, just like individual counseling.
Yeah, and going along with that, in order for it to, quote, work, both people have to really want to stay in the marriage and to want the marriage to work. Because if one person doesn't want the marriage to work or isn't invested in it, the relationship is a two-way street. And so one person wanting to change may be helpful if what that means is that they're willing to, I guess, concede certain things that they would like out of the relationship, or, stop pressing their partner for meeting certain needs and feelings. And if they want to live that way, I do think it's fine for people to make those kind of personal choices. But if a person comes, as you said, into counseling with an agenda that I'm going to go in because my spouse is making me go to counseling and I don't want to look bad like I didn't try, so I'm going to say I put in my 10 marriage counseling sessions, and you kind of sit there with your hands on your hips saying, I dare you to try to do or say something that's going to change my mind. I want to get a divorce. A person will get a divorce if they want to. And oftentimes there is a secret person in the room. There may be an affair. There may be some kind of a relationship in the background that hasn't come to light. And in those cases, people often don't admit it. And if that's going on, that's also kind of a formula for it, quote, not working. But for people who want their marriages, it's a question that I always ask is, do you want to stay married? And if both people say yes, I will say, well, then, yes, marriage counseling will be successful. But there are things that you have to do, and there are changes that each of you have to make.
And a lot of times what can be useful is for each to go into individual counseling first. Because commonly, when you have marital issues, a lot of times they start with individual issues. So what a lot of times I recommend is that each goes into individual, and then they go into marriage after they've had some success with individual counseling, and then maybe they're more open to some of the marital issues. And again, you have to be careful. Like if it's a man and a woman and you go to a woman counselor, the man is going to feel like the woman is siding with the woman. If you go to a man, the woman's going to feel like the man is siding with the husband. So what I commonly recommend for that is that they go into individual and then all four people meet. So man, woman, and the male counselor for the man and the female counselor, and the four people discuss the marital issues, because staying married is critically important. Most people that I counsel are divorced. So divorce is a trauma that most people never recover from. In our culture, it's viewed as a simple solution. It is not a simple solution. I can tell people divorce is not a simple solution. It's a trauma that most people never recover from. So marriage counseling is critically important, but start with individual counseling.
Oftentimes, people come into a marriage with unresolved mental health issues or unresolved relational issues, and they don't know how to be in a loving relationship. And if there are these kind of issues that precede the marriage, then, kind of what you're saying, you need to separate that out and have individual counseling to resolve whatever is the barrier within one individual person or both people. Because if you have people that both have their own mental health or relational barriers, no matter how great the marriage counselor is, if those things aren't addressed, there are going to be problems in the relationship that will remain.
When I think about marriage, I think about how two people come together and they're trying to love each other. Most of the time they end up in conflict is because they don't feel loved. And it's a book out, 5 Love Languages. And I've seen it save marriages. It's like finding your spouse's love language. This would prevent you from going to counseling. I know this. You find out their love language, and that is what stopped that crazy cycle. Because when it gets to going, it's going. And it stops the crazy cycle. And if your wife is physical touch, that is the way she feels loved. But you may be saying, well, I love you because I'm a provider and you have everything you need. But that's not how she feels love. She needs touch. So when you figure out the love language of your spouse, you just run with it. It will prevent you from going to marriage counseling. Because at the end of the day, if both of you know the love language, at the end of the day, you both feel love. That's stopping all that conflict and all that irritation and frustration, all those things that come with an unhealthy marriage.
Thank you, Donna. I'm thinking about a quick follow-up question from me related to your comment, Debbie, so you can start with it about the trauma of divorce. And I think I know you, and I'm hearing you say too, for those that are maybe thinking about divorce or, divorce is easy, hey, take this seriously because there's a deep wound that creates in the individuals and children involved. What about for our friends that are divorced? And what about healing from the pain of divorce? What would be some recommendations or counsel for someone on the other side? Divorce is part of their story, and now how can they see healing or maybe steps toward healing?
Well, my parents were married and divorced 4 times each. So I come from a family of divorce. But I've been married, we won't even say how long. And I'm probably older than you are, by the way. So I'm probably the oldest person up here. I doubt it. Well, I might be. Anyway, but so as far as after divorce, I think the important thing is that we try to understand what really precipitated the divorce, what really precipitated the problem. Because I think very commonly people jump from the kettle into the fire. So they're married, they start, maybe they're having an affair during the marriage, then they, get divorced, and then right away they jump into another marriage. Typically it has the same issues or similar issues, because really the original cause of the original divorce was never addressed or understood. So I would recommend take time and try to process and understand what really did precipitate the divorce. Not just from the other person's standpoint, but from your standpoint. And see if, as you move forward into a future relationship, you can maybe address some of that that was part of the problem.
Divorce invokes a grief process for a person that is left against their will. Some people will leave a marriage and they're the leaver and they think that they're solving a problem. And then I agree with you. But for the person that's left that wanted to stay married, it really is a severe grief reaction. So the way to think about it is, how would you help a person who lost a loved one to death, to an accident, to illness, or any other thing? It's sort of an ambiguous grief, though, because you lost the person, but they're not gone. And whether or not they'll ever be in your life again is undetermined. They're still around to have a relationship with, just not with you right now. And what to do with that is really tough. So think about it as grief.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And maybe many of you have seen, it's been out for a very, very long time, a list of the top loss issues that people go through. And the death of a spouse and the death of a child are ranked right up there, 1 and 2, whatever it is. And divorce is either 3 or 4 on that list, whatever it is. And so there's absolutely a death and grief issue. And, people encounter lots of loss issues. There's a lot of unintended consequences from divorce. And it's a loss of not just that person in the life that you thought you would leave, but you think about all the expectations that you have of going into marriage and maybe having a family and all, the moment you're planning your wedding, your brain sometimes is years down the road of how all that's going to look. You lose all of that when you go through a divorce. And, if you already have children and whatnot, they lose their expectation of what it meant to have mom and dad living together in a house. You have in-laws, you have other cousins that weren't your cousins until you got married. There's a lot of loss and grief that's associated with divorce. And I absolutely agree that you need to treat it like a grief issue and go about it that way.
Earlier we talked about stigma and Christians seeking counseling. I think that divorce is also a very stigmatized issue within the church because divorce is only allowed for this one situation. That's the only biblically approved reason for getting divorced. So then you have a married couple who they're picking straws to see who gets to be the reason that they leave for that one reason. Not really, but there can be these sort of unconscious decisions that are made of, okay, well, if we're Christians and we can only get divorced for this one particular thing, who's it going to be, you or me? That's not. I think that God permitted divorce in the Old Testament because he knew our hard hearts, and he knew that marriages, when left to our own devices, would result in divorce. And so if you are divorced yourself, if you have divorced parents, or it's going that way, it doesn't mean that you can't go and see a Christian counselor and talk about it, even if the reason for that divorce is not because of unfaithfulness. Because we're all unfaithful to God, and we all struggle with sin in different ways. And so that is one of the things that as a Christian therapist, I can help bring into the session, that ultimately divorce is a ramification of the fall and our own wickedness and our own selfishness and our own messiness. And that doesn't excuse it, but it also gives a context to understanding it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Donna. While the mic's going down to Donna, I want to quick mention too that here at Oakwood we have a team trained to be relationship mentors. And it's a great team of folks. Laura and her husband are on that team, and Ann and Mike are on that team as well, and some others of us that are trained to use the Prepare Enrich material to help walk with a couple in a serious relationship, either dating or married, through 6 to 10 sessions. That's keys to having a healthy relationship. And so that's something you can learn more about on our Oakwood website. But we'd love to walk with you if you're looking for support or even just enrichment in your marriage relationship. So Donna.
So it's hard to talk about something when you haven't been through it, because I believe when you've been through it, you have the power and anointing to really bring healing to someone else. But I've been married 31 years almost. And when I think about the people I work with who are divorced, when I'm with them, there's a lot of lies. I'm thinking how you help someone that's divorced. You think about when I'm there, I hear all the lies, like no one will never love me, you know, how people would look at me. And I think when a person is grieving or going through a divorce, it is good to bring God's truth and promises to their lives, to put out those lies, because it's those lies that create that grief and that pain and all that comes with that. So I encourage people with God's truth and his promises to put out those lies so you can start feeling better about yourself, because I think it's like the neural pathway. The neural pathway, if you're divorced and you're hurting, you're just rehearsing it. You're just rehearsing it, the pain, the trauma, and it's just getting stronger and stronger and stronger. But the neural pathway of positivity and promises and truth has to get stronger and stronger and stronger to put out that which is that hurting, that grieving, that pain, and all that. So I think I would encourage them with God's truth to bring healing and wholeness, and so they can start feeling better about themselves and start having healthy patterns in their life.
Excellent. I'm going to ask, just because of the sake of time, I'm going to ask just Michelle if you would speak to this question for us related to kids. With all that's happening in our world, all the uncertainty in our world, how can we help our kids process emotions well and stay emotionally healthy?
It's a great question. I've been in the school district for 14 years, only the last 4 as their school social worker, but I can tell you over the last couple of years, there has been a significant increase in the amount of students dealing with depression and really with anxiety, very much so. And I think what we can do as adults is, 1, listen. Often kids feel that adults are talking to them and telling them what to do and how to feel. And I really think our kids have to have the opportunity to really express themselves, even if it's, sometimes when they're expressing themselves and it's, I work kindergarten through 12th grade, so I can, some of these middle schoolers, all of this stuff gushes out. But sometimes it's just about letting that come out and letting them express themselves rather than, right away we want to go to our rational brain of, whoa, okay, now stop, slow down, let's take this step by step. And kids just don't need that right away. They need to be able to have somebody who they are safe in saying anything they want to, how they want to, and then you can get to, all right, let's talk about that a little more. When you were talking, you said this and you said this. Let's go. You know what I mean? And just really, we talk about listening to adults and being there with them and for them and sitting there with them through some situation. Same thing with kids. They just really want to know that you have their back, that they can trust you and they feel safe with you. And I think, sometimes it's being able to help them also, if they're saying a whole bunch of things, helping them identify exactly what that emotion is. Sometimes they don't have the language for it or the word for it. And you just repeat back to them, okay, you said this, this, and this, and to me, that sounds like you are whatever that emotion is. It's helping them identify what that is so that they can say, yeah, that is how I feel, or no, that's not quite it. It's this. Just giving them voice, giving them room to express, and helping them identify what that is so that they can really talk about it and continue to process that with you. And if they feel safe with you, they will, and they'll keep coming back.
Yeah, great. Boy, our time has flown by. I want at least an hour and a half with each one of you to keep asking all kinds of questions, but this will be our final question of the night. Believe it or not, we've come to that time. But a reminder that the resource table's in the back. On that table are business cards and brochures from almost all of our panelists here tonight. And if there's someone in particular that you felt drawn to in response to that question that you might want to set an appointment to see, please grab their card or chat with them personally. And this final question is thinking about a local church like Oakwood, and we'll go right down the line with our panel here and have each of you share briefly. What is one thing that you would recommend be done to increase awareness of mental health ministry? For a local church like Oakwood, what's one thing that you recommend we do to increase awareness of mental health ministry?
I have to go first. All right, thanks. Hey, I'll break the ice. I would say develop relationships with the people in your church and get to know who the people are if there are counselors in the church. There's probably a lot of us all over the place. We're actually horrible listeners. We like to talk a lot. Oh, maybe it's just me. Build that relationship with the people in your church so that you can say, hey, I know this person. We talked. Why don't you try to talk to them? Here's their business contact information. And just use that element that makes a good counselor relational in the church itself.
Yeah, and I guess I would say get involved, and I say that from a very personal stance. You know, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've been involved in a small group, and I've come to some of the ladies' Bible studies, and that has been the main way for me to really meet people in church and have some folks that I can call and go to when I need someone to talk to. And then they may know somebody, or somebody they know may know somebody. You know, it's that whole networking thing of really then if I don't know, if I have some very specific problem, they go, you know what, I have somebody you can talk to about that. So
I think that one of the most important things that a church can do is for the church leaders and people that have the microphones up front on Sunday mornings to talk about mental health issues, their own, their family members, and their thoughts about it. If it's promoted publicly, I think the congregation listens to the pastors and to the church leaders. And just like sex, when you wonder why your kids aren't asking you questions about it, if you have never brought it up, they're never going to bring it up either. And we don't want it to be an unmentionable. Before I pass the mic, I want to correct something I said earlier. I said 1 out of 5 people in the United States at any given time struggle with a mental health issue. That's the statistic for children. For adults, it's 1 in 3.
Well, I work with, I'm at Elmbrook Church, and they offer a rotating series of classes. One is called the Boundaries class, which is a wonderful class, and then Life's Healing Choices. And I think, Marcus, you said you have access or something to those.
Yes, yeah, on Right Now Media,
Yeah,
which is a resource
right.
that Oakwood has. Yeah, those
And
materials are
Elmbrook,
online.
yeah, and then they do Healing Everyday Problems that deals with conflict. And they rotate that class throughout the year. So one's in fall, then spring, then summer, and then they start it up. And that has been really helpful to allow people to kind of sign up for a class, not as threatening. And then they, you know, it helps them kind of get, I don't know, more comfortable coming forward and getting involved with the mental health ministry.
Oh, that was some good ones. But I'm thinking I would have a strong prayer ministry, and I would have a time where people who struggle with mental health, I would have a time period where they could come in and get prayer. Because I do believe in prayer. I do believe God hears, and I do know He answers. I also would have like a strong discipleship ministry, because through discipleship, you build relationships. And when people are in like a little crisis, I do believe they will feel safe to go to those people who are in their discipleship group. So I think those would be the two that I would. If you have a discipleship ministry, then you're on good track.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and thank you, panel. Boy, such a gift to have you with us. Thank you, thank you.